So my name is Luchina Fisher. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a filmmaker and visual storyteller. So my most recent film that I made is called The Dads, and it's a short film, a short documentary about five dads of trans kids who take a weekend fishing trip with Dennis Shepard, who is the father of Matthew Shepard. And the film premiered in 2023 at South by Southwest, and soon after was acquired by Netflix. And the NBA All-Star Dwayne Wade, who is also the proud father of a trans daughter, came aboard as an executive producer. So that's just one of the many projects that I've worked on recently. Prior to that, I've made features, including one that's currently on the circuit called Locked Out. I co-directed that, and that is about the barriers to Black homeownership and the incredible brave women of Detroit who are fighting against modern day redlining and predatory lending. I've also done projects about trans elders like Gloria Allen. That was my first feature that I directed, and it's called Mama Gloria. You can still catch it briefly on PBS. And my current project is also for PBS, and it's also supported by Black Public Media. And it's called Hiding in Plain Sight. And it's a feature documentary about the unsung story of Black queer presence in music. So much of the music that we listen to, the genres that we enjoy, there was a Black queer person at the center of it. So it's about finally acknowledging those people that we've enjoyed their music, we've co-opted their culture, and they are part of our American story. So yeah, it's about really acknowledging their full identity. So, what inspires me is to tell stories that I would want to see. I make the films that I wanted to see growing up, the voices I wanted to hear, the people I wanted to see. I'm really interested in working at this intersection of race, gender, and identity. And so I'm always trying to take narratives that we don't see all the time or twist the narrative that we're most familiar with by putting voices that we don't hear all the time. And I love doing that as a way of expanding the way we tell our story as Americans, but also as humans. It's really about humanizing the experiences of so many people who've been left out of the narratives that we see, that we read about. And so that's what really interests me. What really lights me up is, these hidden gems of stories. Well, I'm delighted that GLAAD, which is an organization that really supports the representation, positive and, just more full, truthful representations of LGBTQ people in media, that they've really recognized my work in a lot of ways and been very supportive of it. And so my first feature, Mama Gloria, was nominated for a GLAAD Media Award, and the dads most recently received a special recognition from GLAAD. My other short film that's been on the circuit, Teen Dream, has won a number of awards, and that's about two women who became athletes in retirement. And nothing, not age, race, geography is going to stand in their way of competing in the National Senior Games. So these two women are so inspiring to me and have inspired a lot of other folks because we've won Best Documentary Short at a number of festivals. We received a Golden Thumb Award at the Ebert Fest, which was originally started by Roger Ebert, the great film critic, and continues at the helm of his wife, Chaz Ebert. that was, really special getting that award. And Locked Out, the feature film about the barriers to Black home ownership, has also been recognized, and we won the American Black Film Festival last year, and it's opened a major festival in DC, the Double Exposure Film Festival. Last year, I was on the circuit with three films, which was crazy. The Dads won Best Short Documentary at the El Paso Film Festival. I just couldn't get to all of them, but it's nice that the work stands so much for itself and that it's being received and finding audiences and it's resonating deeply with people. That's the biggest award, really. And I make the films mostly because I am really seeking greater understanding for myself, but I want others, to have a deeper understanding of the folks that they're meeting through these films. And I hope I'm spreading a little bit of love. All of my films, while they take on serious topics, have a lightness and tone and a joyfulness because I believe you have to laugh, you have to smile, you got to spread love in this lifetime. And hopefully it brings a little healing and joy to those who watch it. Love Aim High. I mean, here again is this organization I was asked to consult with through EM marketing. They were looking for a way of telling their story through visual storytelling. And for me, really, this is, I think, the best way of communicating because I feel with the film medium, with visual medium, you are reaching people in a way that bypasses the brain and it goes right to the heart. And I worked for many years as a journalist. I wrote so many stories. I've done storytelling in so many different forms. And I just have never seen people more touched and transported in a way that film allows you to do. And so Aim High was looking for a way to kind of tell their story simply through visual storytelling. And we worked with them actually two times, and the first time was during the pandemic. So you can imagine, we did all of our filming virtually. We used sort of a special equipment to be able to film folks with cameras that we sent to them. So it wasn't just through Zoom, but it was a technological challenge, and yet what always comes through is the voice, is the heart, is the soul of the person, and these are young people whose lives are changed by this summer educational program that really sees the whole person. And I so support their mission. I so got their mission. And it's the kinds of stories that I love to tell. And so we had about 5 minutes to really tell the story of Aim High in two different videos. And it was really just a joy to collaborate with them, to understand their mission and the work they're doing and then try to translate that on the screen and know that it's always there for people to access in the telling of that story. So yeah, that was pretty special. Well, my sister knows Ken, and I don't know if they were particularly looking for a filmmaker. It may be that they were looking for someone who could do visual storytelling. And I think I had just finished making Mama Gloria. And at the same time, I was probably starting on a new project for the History Channel. But I was able to fit in working on a project for EM with the Aim High folks. And I was so glad that I did because it just, again, it's one of these gems, these sort of hidden gems that more people need to know about. And if they can replicate in other parts of the country, we can really do so much more for our kids. It really is about, these kids being able to see themselves and their ability to learn and achieve. And that's like lifelong stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, that's kind of how it happened. Yeah, for sure. I think after I did the first Aim High video, I got a call or an email from some folks at Tommy Hilfiger, the clothing designer, and they were looking for somebody to work on a brand project. And I think I was juggling maybe two other projects at the same time, but they were very persistent. They had seen Mama Gloria. They really liked the way that I told that story. And they felt it was important to have a Black woman storyteller behind the project, which was really about three designers who were competing for an opportunity to design a collection with Tommy Hilfiger. And it was kind of a Project Runway type competition. And they were looking to create kind of a short docu-series following these three designers and, the ultimate one winner. We ended up filming these three designers in different parts of the country. And then when they came together for one part of the competition, and it turned into about a four-part docu-series that ended up on YouTube, but has gotten like, I think the first episode got over 1 million views. It's just really crazy. And it was their first time attempting anything like that. But it worked so well that when it came time to announce the winners, they had the three designers come up on stage and they had a little conversation, but they were like, Luchina, you need to be a part of that too, because it's not just enough that we're doing this. An important part of this whole competition and process is the documentation of it. It's the story of these three designers. It's the story of what Tommy Hilfiger and Harlem's Fashion Row, which was partnered with them, is trying to do. And so we want you up there on stage too, talking about your career and your journey through this process. So that was really interesting. And then, I've also collaborated with the Human Rights Campaign, another nonprofit like Aim High. And in fact, Human Rights Campaign helped fund the dads. And so, that project was really a very personal one for me as somebody who serves with the Parents for Transgender Equality Council. And I know a number of those dads who are in the film because I advocate alongside them as a parent. And so, really, I overheard them having a conversation, which is the genesis of the film. They were talking about taking a trip to the woods. And I thought that was just such an interesting juxtaposition of these dads who love to, do all these kind of manly things that we stereotypically think of as being with a certain kind of dad, but they're also advocating for LGBTQ youth. And so I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition. And we pitched it to Human Rights Campaign and they supported us. And I really wanted to just push a different kind of storytelling. Like, how can we tell this story as a documentary versus a typical kind of visual video that they might do, in the more visual storytelling kind of advocacy space. And they were like, you go and run with it. But none of us knew it would end up on Netflix. So, that is just the power of storytelling for sure. And it's great when whether it's a brand or a nonprofit sees the value in that. I think it is important to get another perspective. So, hire somebody who's trained and has the experience as director, as a as a creative, a visual creative, to tell the story because it is very different, particularly if you're looking to tell something that is more in the vein of a documentary, then you need a documentary filmmaker. It's not necessarily something you can do in-house. And I think that's often what many brands think, or they think of it as more like advertisement, but it doesn't really fit in that world. What we see today is a very sophisticated viewer. People, including, my children, are growing up in a digital age and they're very savvy about, story, whether it's in a TikTok video, an Instagram reel, or, something they watch on Netflix. They know the difference between a documentary and a scripted project. And so I really do think it's not enough to also just put the traditional commercial out there to try to sell your brand. It's more important, I think, to get to what is the story of the brand and how does whatever initiative you're doing, or, maybe it's a group that you're supporting or a project that you're pushing. If you want to try to introduce that to your audience, to find new ways to connect with them. And I do think that visual storytelling, documentary filmmaking is a great way to do that. This is what audiences can sense when there's an authenticity to the story versus a sell or some attempt to manipulate them. And so I think this is where my skills are. This is where, great filmmakers work, at that place of authenticity. That is what I'm always seeking in the stories that I tell. Is I call it the sort of truth of the story of that person's experience. And that comes with, establishing a space of trust, of coming from a place as a filmmaker where you're giving that person a space to feel like they can be heard, and their life, their story is going to be treated with great reverence and care. And that's, where you grow authentic storytelling from. And that's a real skill. And I think brands know this increasingly when they are reaching out, to people like me. They recognize that it's not as simple as just getting people in front of the camera and letting them talk. There's a real craft and art to this. One way that I'm using artificial intelligence at the moment is through transcribing interviews. And I find most of the time it's gibberish. I mean, no, I mean, sometimes, you get a good baseline, but you do have to go back and reconstruct because the AI does not always know what that person is talking about or catches the nuance or intonation of people's speech. That aside, certainly, when you're coloring, or color correcting video especially, there are new tools that you can use. That's happening a little bit, but I think, you do have to be careful, especially in nonfiction and documentary storytelling, about, and again, any sort of manipulation, because that is breaking that trust with your audience that is expecting authenticity. And I know recently there was some controversy. I can't remember what the film was, but kind of reconstructing the voice of someone who was deceased, and doing it through AI. And not telling the viewers, or, it came out later, I think, in the press. And so that was a little bit that was a bit controversial. I think some filmmakers were, more fine with it than others. But yeah, it does make me think because you're always looking for ways to tell story and to push, the visuals of storytelling. For some people, that's, animation. I think you're going to see it more and more, even in the documentary space. I think there is a recognition that is in part what, these strikes were about from the Writers Guild, from the Screen Actors, that AI is here and it's going to continue to play a role, I think, in visual storytelling. As an independent filmmaker, you're always marketing yourself, It's kind of like being an entrepreneur or your own business person. I have my own production company. Of course, I have a website and one that I have to continually update. I have social media, both my personal, my production company, and some individual films have their own social media sites. So at one point, I did have an assistant who was doing my social media. I'm trying to probably consolidate a little bit more, possibly post a little bit less now that, I have more of a reputation and I don't have to constantly promote myself. But it is true that if you're not sort of seen or visible, people tend to forget that you're there. So, I was back at Sundance this year and, in part raising money for Hiding in Plain Sight, which we were able to do. So that was a good, worthwhile trip. But it was also, just catching up with friends and meeting new friends and interestingly running into people whose names I know and who knew me. And it was like, oh my God, we're meeting for the first time in person. Just that contact is a great way for people to remember you. And that led to a couple of meetings, kind of just meet greets, getting to know one another. Certainly when your films, start to get on certain platforms, that also, takes on its own life. So, Netflix has a huge kind of marketing machine, and the film had an Oscar campaign and got into a lot of great festivals. And, Netflix was there to support me in that. And we did a lot of press around the dads, so the press helps, all of these things. And then, one really important aspect for me is always giving back. Because for me, as an independent filmmaker, there were others in the industry who were more established who became my mentors, and who helped me in some way, who made a call or came aboard a project. And I need to pay that forward to the next generation. So I teach at Yale University a class, an intro to doc filmmaking, and I love working with young people and students and especially those who've never made a documentary before, to see that they can do it by the end of the class. They are making their first short film. I do a lot of mentoring myself, and I participate in the Salzan Story Lab, which is every year in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins, and we're meeting again emerging filmmakers. So I'm, really talking to that next generation, which is always good because, they help keep me in the know. And, I impart a little bit of wisdom, and I think that also sort of just keeps me really in touch with the industry and what's happening. And then I feel just grateful to also have my agent, Amanda LeBeau at CAA, who took me on last year. and they get me out there too. So it's uh it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it all kind of adds up to keep me excited about just all the things that's happening. Have so many ideas, and then definitely some stuff that's in development that when the time is right, I'll launch. But it's like I'll send this one out here, send this one out there, and the good thing is, these ideas they just come, and partially because I am present, I'm out there. People also come to me with ideas and commissions. So I do have a few more things to do before I slow down. The
Yeah.
beautiful thing about, I think, being creative is that there's really no limit. And for director, of course, you need to have that, physical stamina of like being on the set and, traveling from here to there. But really, I look at Clint Eastwood, I look at Barbara Streisand, or, there's so many artists and directors, Martin Scorsese, who are who are well into their, twilight years. They continue to inspire me. I'm not slowing down either.